So after a 2-year process of starting my podcast, going through different agencies to help me produce and do all the things, like I didn't know shit about shit when I started mine. We started pulling back the curtain on, well, how did you become successful? But these high achieving, highly ambitious women, their zone of genius is not editing their show. When you don't know the processes in your business and what you actually need, it's difficult to hire. Any great athlete studies the tape. And if you don't get better. You don't learn your weak points. You don't learn where you could do better. You don't learn what maybe you shouldn't do anymore. Like, the same with podcasts, the same with anything. And right now, content is the thing that you got to get good at. I think true entrepreneurship is when you finally understand that you're going to have a whole lot more no's versus yeses, a lot more losses and failures than wins. You know, so I feel like I've always been okay with sucking. And that's been the biggest piece, I think, for me creating any level of success I've ever had in anything that I do, is I'm fine to not be the best out there. I will try my best. I will give it everything I have.
Full ass.
But if I fall short of first place or whatever that looks like, I'm okay because I know how I showed up on my end.
Welcome to the show, Jessica.
I'm so excited to be here.
I am so excited you're here because it's rare I get to meet for the first time a fellow San Diegan who I needed to know.
I know. And I know you have a strong love of the Padres. I caught that on a past episode and I'm like, yes, like that's when you know someone's from here.
That's right.
Right? Like, you
I
know,
bleed brown.
And my son is obsessed. His dad is as well. And they have every jersey. We were just at a game. We sat finally in home run alley for the first time. And we were like, this is amazing. And it's just such an incredible thing to experience that, but then also with your kid.
Yes.
Yeah. So, you know.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you grew up here, which is rare for people like us.
That's what people
Everyone's
say
transplants.
to us. I know. After 22 years of clients coming into my chair, and them saying that I was the weird one for being, the local, I'm like, no, it is normal. I have friends that grew up here. Like, we're normal. You're the one who's the transplant.
Because once you're here, you can't leave.
No.
I mean, I tried. I left. I came back. I left. I came back. It's just San Diego's home.
Yeah, it is home. And anyone I feel that does leave didn't have a true appreciation of what we actually have. Because people want to say there isn't stuff to do here. And I'm like, it is one of the most sought after vacation places in the world. What do you mean there's nothing to do? You're not creative enough to figure it out. So maybe you don't belong here.
Fair enough. And you know what? With how limited real estate we have, maybe you should go.
Yeah.
Stop soaking up our sunshine.
Right.
So I have to ask you, because in preparation, I was listening to some of your episodes, and one thing that it's such a cool name, your course, Start Your Damn Podcast course. How did you come up with that name?
Well, thank you. I received that. I felt like for the longest time, the tech and the process behind how podcasting happens overwhelms people to the point where they don't take any action. Like a lot of things that we don't know because we've never done it before. Like a favorite line, I don't know what I don't know, but it's what keeps most people stuck. And so after a 2-year process of starting my podcast, going through different agencies to help me produce and do all the things, like I didn't know shit about shit when I started mine. The way I started my podcast was because we were finally closed during COVID. I finally had a space, so I had the time, and I was out of excuses. Because, most people's excuse for not doing something is I don't have the time or I don't have the money. So for once I was out of excuses. I had just recently met a new videographer as a client, right? Underground hair I was doing. And he said, let's do this. Let's start recording. So we started filming live. So the first 40 episodes are shot live in the studio where I got to figure out how to do all of that. And, I think through the pressure of him pushing me to do it, through my friends who were photographers, everyone was sitting around and they were like, just start it. Just start the damn thing. And so, naming things is always a challenge. You want them to have meaning and purpose. And for me, I'm like, keep it clear and concise. You don't want to confuse your audience. What do you want to do? I want to start my damn podcast. So it just felt like something that was me that I could speak about with like true energy and get people fired up like I was, to know that they didn't have to stay stuck anymore.
So what made you want to start? I get why you started the podcast, because you were out of excuses, but why the course?
Well, do you know why I started the podcast?
Well,
because
I don't know the true reason why you started the podcast. I know you were out of excuses.
Yes. Well, like yourself, I stayed kind of in the wings of my business for the longest time. I was like there for my team. I was there for the clients. And I wasn't really in the mode of thinking like I was ever going to be forward facing. And so when I joined a business mastermind years ago with Chris and Lori Harder, my amazing mentors, I felt like, okay, I need to do this. I need to grow customer. Like I need people to know who I am now that I'm not just a hairdresser or a salon owner. What can I do in the online space? But in that time back in 2019, early 2019, it was about the follower count and the likes and all of that stuff. So I skipped the step as a new, I guess, online entrepreneur in building an audience, of building a community of people who knew me for something. And so that's where I knew the podcast needed to come into play so people could find me for free, right? I could give value. I could tell them who I was, what I was all about, share my experience, so that then when I created something to sell later on, or I became part of a brand or created my next brand, they knew me for something other than that. I wasn't just selling them that. They were learning to get to know me. And like, you know, when you connect with somebody, you trust them. You trust what they're sharing with you. You trust all the things. So that's where the premise of the show came from. But it was because we were closed that I actually took the action.
Sure.
Yeah.
What was your first episode about?
That, you know, what's so funny is I wanted nothing to do with my industry. I wanted out of the beauty industry. And I thought that was going to be the answer to all of my woes, if you would. But I really just wanted to reinvent myself. So I couldn't come up with a name for the podcast. And again, my video guy was like, I had a brand already going where I had these networking brunches for hairdressers called The Insiders. It was like the Insiders Collective, but it was like Beauty Insiders. We had merch that said Beauty Inspires Beauty on them. So he said, just call it Beauty Inspires Beauty. And I said, I don't want it to be, you know, pigeonholed in only the beauty industry. He's like, you can change it later. And then that gave me the freedom to say, fine, let's start talking about the things that matter most to the people who are most needing to hear it, which was my industry, who were closed and didn't know when we were going to open again. So I started as a very frustrated, angry podcaster, sharing that energy with my entire industry. I was like, I can create a space where I can give our industry a voice right now. And though I know this isn't the end goal for me and what I always want to talk about, I feel like I had to pay back an industry that raised me. Mm-hmm. And so I created the avenue to allow other people to come in like this, ask them how they were feeling, what they were doing, how they were processing through. And as that evolved, we started pulling back the curtain on, well, how did you become successful? I've known you for so many years in the industry. I see what you're doing now. You have an education program, you have a salon, you run an amazing team. How did you get there?
Yep.
And I thought, wow, I finally get to be nosy. All the things that I grew up getting in trouble for, like, this is allowed. Like, as an adult, I can just ask you questions and then we can share that conversation. I love podcasting. Give me more, give me more. And then it turned into this like thing where, you know, you got to also share their expertise and like, did they have something to sell? Were they creating a brand? And so that connection piece is what I knew I was good at in the salon, but it also just propelled me into something that if you would have asked if I thought I had the experience for it, I would have said no.
Sure.
But in doing it, I realized I did. So fast forward to starting the course, my last team that I got to work with, I had been taught to outsource everything, right? You don't do production of this. You stay in your zone of genius and you do what you're good at and what you're meant to be doing as part of the brand. Everyone has a position. But when you're an independent entrepreneur or a solo entrepreneur or a brand new accidental entrepreneur, you kind of have to have all the hats on. You have to figure out how to do stuff on your own if you don't have the resources to pay someone else to edit your show. And so I felt very disempowered through the process of the podcast because I felt so dependent on everyone who was helping build the show. And as people do, they move and they change career and they're not with you forever. So I went through a few different teams of people helping me and finally landed on my team that I currently have, who are just amazing. It's 2 engineers, husband and wife. They're amazing. And finally I said, you guys have such amazing systems and processes. My brain doesn't work that way. Can you please help me build a course where we can help other people start their fucking podcast? That's what it first, it's not always appropriate. And
that was the original
that
name?
was, yeah, that was how I said it.
I kind of like that name better.
I know. That's everyone who knows me knows, unfortunately, that's my favorite word. So I say all that to say that they agreed to create this course with me. And I said, make it a little bit too comprehensive. Like your guys' brain, give them everything. Leave them with no questions. Like, let's create the course of all courses because I've bought everybody else's course. I know what's in it. And while they may be good, they're not good enough. And so my whole thing is I never half-ass anything. I use my full ass. And in that, that's bodybuilding days. And in that, I wanted to be known as the person who put together the most comprehensive course that they could then have the empowerment to know they could do all of that. Because had I known the back end of all of it, I would have known how to hire better. When you don't know the processes in your business and what you actually need, it's difficult to hire. And then even more so, it's almost difficult to see the value in paying somebody else to do those things for you. So with the course came all of my amazing friends and people who are like, I want to take the course, but these high achieving, highly ambitious women, their zone of genius is not editing their show. It's not booking guests on the show. It's not doing the tedious work. It's being in their zone of genius and interviewing and being forward facing and maybe moving into speaker, moving into a guest on someone else's podcast. So that's where the second part of this has come into play, where we now are creating a full-blown podcast, broadcasting type media agency to empower people to go through the course, see what all is entailed with it. A lot of them are already producing their own shows, and allow us to step in and scale your show.
And how would you, so if I take the course, and I think what you're hitting on is so important, because some people feel like, and I'm one of them, like, I can't edit the show. I don't have that skill, but I'd like to understand what's required, not necessarily because I'm going to do it, but because I want to be able to speak intelligently with those that do.
Right.
I want to make sure that we are being best in class in what we're doing. And I want to hold our show to the highest standard. And if I'm going to be an ostrich and put my head in the ground and say, I don't need to learn this because I'm never going to do it. Well, that's a bad way of growth. Better to know a lot of things that you're not going to do than know nothing.
Absolutely. And I bet that was true for you when you started your business, right? You knew every process in there, so you knew how to hire.
I started not knowing anything, but I learned every process.
Yes. And a lot of people take so much time because they're so prideful, or they're not willing to invest in themselves because they're not fully committed. And I understand that. And I love that for people. Like, if you want to go to YouTube University and Google.com and spend your days figuring it all out, like, good for you. But the majority of us want to get there quicker. We want to pay to skip the line. That's where mentorship and courses and programs and, done for you agencies come into play.
Yep. So
that you can stay doing what you're really naturally called to do, and let other people do the work who can probably do it better than you.
Well, you hope so.
Right.
Right? I mean, that's the whole idea.
That's the whole idea.
Because it's a lot harder to be successful if you have to do everything.
Yes.
And if you can speak intelligently, you can also inspire and make people want to work with you because they understand that you care.
Right.
If I don't learn, it means I don't care. I don't learn things I don't care about.
Right.
Just I don't.
Are you not learning that from your kid right now too?
I'm definitely learning
Oh
from
my
kids.
gosh. Like, my son is brilliant, but when he's uninterested, he is uninterested. He came home, he had an F in Spanish. I said, why? He's like, I don't want to learn it. His dad's girlfriend speaks fluent Spanish. His dad speaks some. I'm like, and we live in San Diego. We know how many people speak. Uninterested. So I'm like, this teacher is doing a poor job getting you excited to learn something. That's on her.
Yep.
So, it's interesting when you look at kids when they really care about something. Like, he is an expert at Fortnite. He wants to have his own channel. He wants to do all the things. And he works really hard at it. So it's crazy when we are interested in something, we do pay attention.
When you can learn, I believe we can learn everything we need to be successful from kids.
Yeah.
Because kids are the best at learning new things, sucking at things when we first start, overcoming adversity, not letting it. I mean, imagine if, as adults, if we quit as quickly as adults quit something because we're not very good at it, none of us would be able to walk.
True.
Right?
Right.
Kids fall down a million times learning to walk, learning to tie their shoes, learning to ride bikes, learning to play any game that they now love to do, instruments. Us as adults, we're not good at it for 2 minutes. And we're like, it's not for me. And we're scared to suck. We're scared to be bad for a while. And that whole concept, to your point of, yeah, you know what? There's no experience until you try it. And that's what I love about the name of your podcast, Start Your Damn Podcast, because I also was in that same boat. For 3 years, I was contemplating this show. And every year I was like, yeah, okay, I'm going to do it. And I got all this stuff and I got all this equipment and I didn't do it.
Mm-hmm.
And then I had a friend of mine who really was part of the inspiration for me to actually go through with it. He was like, I will help you. Just book your first guest. I'm like, okay, I did. And I actually recorded an episode in my office 2.5 years ago. Didn't go anywhere with it.
Didn't go anywhere.
Because of all those reasons. And I have to also realize that, yeah, I talk a big game about all the different things that make me successful and I'm clear on it, but I also fall off track. I also need to have that mirror moment. And I go, wait a second. Am I using my own core values, my own success formula with this right now? What am I scared of? If no one listens to it because I'm bad, then no one listen to it. Who cares?
Yeah.
And if everyone listens to it and I'm bad, well, everyone listen to it and I'll get better.
Right.
So what am I scared of?
And they can see themselves in you trying.
The journey.
The journey. And the majority of the people think we're going to be really good at stuff. I had this conversation with my girlfriend. Actually, I've had it with a couple of women actually recently, lately, who are high achieving, successful women. And there's this facade that we're so confident, right? Oh, you're so confident. You must think you can do anything. And I'm like, I do think I can do anything. I have that childlike, yeah, if I learn it, I'll be good at it. But it holds a lot of people back because they're like, yeah, I do that. And I would be good at it, but I'm not going to try.
Mm-hmm.
So that is like one level deeper of like that worthiness piece of, do you really think you'd be good at it? Or are you just not willing to be really bad at it in the beginning? And same, my first few episodes, like go watch my show. It's awful. I probably said a bazillion times and did all the things you shouldn't do. But just like my son, when he's not doing well at a sport or doing something, I said, how did you get better at Fortnite? How many hours have you spent practicing? You can't expect to come off the bench and be that good. Mm-hmm. Like, we got some talent in there, kid, but you're at the age where hard work's going to outbeat any talent you have.
Correct.
And with consistency, you build that muscle, you study. Like any great athlete studies the tape. And if you don't get better. You don't learn your weak points. You don't learn where you could do better. You don't learn what maybe you shouldn't do anymore. Like, the same with podcasts, the same with anything. And right now, content is the thing you got to get good at.
Well, it is if it's your lane.
Sure.
Right? And that's the area where I see a lot of forward faces for their brands not recognizing what they need to be doing.
Mm.
And this is the push, right? Is understand what's required. Like, I never wanted to be I never cared about a personal brand. I didn't post on social. If you look at my Instagram prior to January 1st of this year, I hadn't made a post in over a year.
Wow.
And full disclosure, I didn't want to post on social media.
Can we just pause for a second? Does everybody relate to that for a second? Like, nobody, I think, really wants to have to do anything. Do we really want to have to go work out? Do you really want to have to show up every day to do something to make it be successful? No. Mm-hmm. That's the piece.
That's the piece. I didn't want to do it, and I didn't. And I'm a private guy. I was like, I just want to live my life and keep that part of me private. And finally, after just repetition in front of investors and business partners and confidants and mentors, and they said, Jeff, you can't do what you're doing and hit the level you want to hit if you do not lean into this. Mm-hmm. And so, like all things, when I finally made the decision, I leaned all in, and now I post 2-3 times a day, and it's like a whole thing. And I have cameras following me around half the time, and I'm finally getting comfortable with that whole concept. But 5 months ago, that was just not even in the closest thing from my reality.
Okay, can we just take a second and listen to what you just said? 5 months ago, you weren't doing what you're doing.
Correct.
You were stumbling over things. Things weren't as consistent. Like, it only takes a short amount of time. We always think things are going to take longer than they really can if you go all in. Now, if you just decided to do one podcast here and there, and you kind of showed up on social, and you didn't actually hire the crew to follow, like, you wouldn't have had the growth you've had in such a short time. It doesn't seem like you do anything like in little bits. When you do something, it seems like you go like, I'm going full ass, right?
I'm like your son. I'm all in or I'm all out. Full ass.
Full ass.
That's going to be the theme today.
Yeah,
I'm full ass.
We're calling the podcast full ass.
This is the full ass episode.
Cheers.
Cheers.
We should have a shot of something. That just seems inappropriate to be drinking water right now. It's 5 o'clock somewhere.
It is. I just don't have anything. But I think what you're saying is accurate. And the premise of the show and what I'm most excited about this show is the questions I get asked all the time from aspiring entrepreneurs, people I call wantrepreneurs, business leaders, and people who are just trying to find success. And social media is amazing at showing our highlight reels.
Yes.
And I do a lot of activity, and so I have a lot of opportunities to showcase things that I've been successful at, as have a lot of our guests, and they think everything is just easy and successful. And most of the time it's not.
Right.
Success is a small, if I had as many wins as I did losses, my social media would be flooded, right? I have way more losses than I have wins. I'm sure you do as well. And that's part of the success journey. Mm-hmm. That's part of that formula. So when you launched your show, and I know you changed the name because you eventually call it Unscripted.
Correct.
Which is such a great name.
Isn't it?
It is.
Thank you.
It is. Because it lets you go anywhere.
Yeah.
Right? It's always accurate. It's always on point.
And that's what I needed. I needed that freedom in the name to allow me to fully show up as myself or whoever I was going to become.
But the fact that you are now thriving in the podcast world and you are thriving in the podcast course creation world and you are officially a content queen, right? I mean,
thank you.
I don't know if you've dubbed yourself that, but I'm calling you the content queen.
I will take it. I'm going to add that to my bio today on the way home.
Yeah, I'm going to ask you about your bio in a minute because you have some cool names in that bio. But in that same vanity, in that same vein, recognizing that I'm sure along the journey of you developing the course and developing your podcast and getting that exposure, that expansion that you've done, you've had tons of setbacks. And we obviously don't talk about them publicly because truly successful people, we don't dwell in them.
Right. Thank you for saying that. Let's just take a pause for a moment because I do feel like we're in a society that loves to, I don't know if trauma bond's the right word because I'm not a therapist. I don't really know how to use terms like that, but it is so much easier to connect on negative shit because it happens to everybody. But the people I gravitate towards are the ones who are doing things in spite of, showing up anyways. If you are human, you know you're going through struggles, personally, professionally, whatever the case might be. So you would be silly to think that everyone you see as you're dubbing successful hasn't gone through that. You're a fool. Yeah.
And it's perspective.
Right.
We can be upset that a thorn bush or a rose bush has thorns, or we can be excited that a thorn bush has roses. Same plant.
Yeah.
Same outcome. It's just perspective. And so I think what we do really well as we gain clarity on what it takes to be successful, as we figure out our formula, is we stop focusing on the failures, on the setbacks, on the trials and tribulations, the struggles and hurdles and hills that we have to climb and cross. And we focus really more on the progress and the micro steps that we're taking to get up the mountain, knowing that that's just part of the process. In sales, I used to tell my sales team, and I learned this from a mentor, if it's going to take you 50 no's to get to a yes, go out and get 50 no's really quickly. And when you have that different perspective and you're at 47 straight no's, you're excited because you're only 3 away from getting that yes. Versus if I didn't say that and you're just like, oh my gosh, I've been told no 47 times, I quit. And then a successful salesperson will say, well, I sold 3 deals. And they're like, well, I called 48 people and I got no's. And he's like, well, I called 153 and I got 150 no's, but I got those 3 yeses.
I love stories like that. And that's why I love listening to people share that insight when they say, I started off as a door-to-door carpet salesman. Like one of my other mentors, Lindsay Schwartz, shout out to her. She has a podcast called Powerhouse Women. She shares that she was a door-to-door carpet salesperson. She's like, I didn't do it for the love of carpet. I did it because I knew that skill set in sales would help me later on. And I don't know if she knew it when she did it, but like that hindsight is 20/20. And, I remember back in high school, my mom had a boyfriend who owned commercial real estate and offered to give me a summer job. And I had to sit with the phone book, if anybody knows what that is, and make cold calls to people. And that was my job. Spend the day making phone calls, learn how to talk to people. And then when I moved into the hair industry, I was young. I was 19, 20 years old. And my mentor then said, go read the paper, watch the local movies, see what's going on in town that you can bring conversation to your client. Create an experience within that, and they will find value in you. Even if you're not that great at what you're doing, they'll give you another chance or they'll work with you or whatnot. So, when we look back, that's the only way we can ever connect the dots to things. And you wouldn't need to have a personal brand now if you hadn't done all the things you'd been doing. And to your point about, connecting on wins versus failures, I think true entrepreneurship is when you finally understand that you're going to have a whole lot more no's, we'll just call it a no, versus yeses, a lot more losses and failures than wins. But you can't focus on that. You have to focus on the flower having, the rose having the rose instead of the thorns. So I feel like I've always been okay with sucking. And that's been the biggest piece, I think, for me creating any level of success I've ever had in anything that I do, is I'm fine to not be the best out there. I will try my best. I will give it everything I have.
Full ass.
But if I fall short of first place or whatever that looks like, I'm okay because I know how I showed up on my end.
Well, you're judging you versus you.
Correct. And that's always been one of my favorite sayings. And it helped me get through bodybuilding competitions and show up and do that kind of stuff because, you know, I had to be okay. I didn't know what the competition was going to look like that day. So all I could control was what I was doing, how I was showing up, the effort I was putting in. And so, you know, putting myself through that process of that was to see what I was made of. What is the resilience meter that you have? How resourceful can you get? And when you can build that nitty gritty pieces of your life, like you can bounce back a lot quicker. I still cry. I still get frustrated. Shit still goes wrong. People still fuck you over. You still have expectations of what you think is going to happen and then it doesn't, you know, and you want to throw your business in the trash maybe every other day.
Yep.
But the ones who are doing the things that we see, they're the ones not quitting.
Describe to me your process when those things happen. When you do feel that way. What is your pity process?
Oh, well, it's evolved. And before I was like anybody else. I'd call somebody to bitch and put blame on it not being anything to do with me and everything to do with everybody else because that's easier. But when things started to reoccur in my life, I was like, well, maybe I'm playing a role in this just as much as they are. And so when I started to learn to take ownership, it allowed for me to give myself grace first. And well, you didn't know, or you didn't really understand, or, okay, you made a mistake. How quick can you not make that mistake again? Because that's truly the only way we can grow. We have to understand that we're going to make mistakes. But how quick can you pick yourself back up and try again and not do that same thing again? And so now the process through a failure is trying to understand how it happened first. And then sitting with, you know, sometimes you wake up, you're like, how did I get here? If you can work out that process, it's usually easier to understand. And when we understand things, or when we understand why somebody did what they did, you can forgive them and move on. If you don't understand why something happened, it's hard to say you forgive them or you understand. But when we understand why somebody did something from a place of their own knowingness or whatever, their hurt or their, you know, inexperience, you can process that faster and move on. I've been screwed over a couple times in different various situations, and I just have to say, what did I learn? What am I not going to do or allow next time? And so it's allowed for me to create these boundaries in my life that I realize are for me, not for other people. And so that was one of my first courses I taught to my industry people, was building a non-negotiable life full of boundaries that take care of you. Because we serve so many people one-to-one in the salon, we work with a lot of energy. Like, what are you doing to protect yourself and to let some of that go so that you can put yourself first? Because if you're in a service-based industry, you are a people pleaser. And I hate that that word's been kind of dumped on as if it's a bad thing. If you're an entrepreneur, you're probably a people pleaser.
Yep.
It's what makes you you. And it's what makes you authentically connectable to people, relatable. If you're not there to please people, what are you there for?
That's a good point.
There's no reason people want to create a legacy if it's not for the people. So, you know, looking back, I think the process has evolved, and it depends on what level of pain I'm experiencing, how the process goes. But movement, working out, and my routine is what keeps me sane. So movement was my first experience with breath work. It is my moving meditation. I'm not really good at sitting still. That's why I got in trouble growing up. It's why being in the beauty industry was the best thing for me. I could talk all day. I could move my body. I could multitask. I could do all the things. It was a great creative outlet for someone with, you know, undiagnosed ADHD and just a love of talking and being nosy. Yep. So it was perfect for me. But, you know, I think at times I didn't always understand how a routine and structure in my own life could support me through challenging times or even big up seasons, right? Because if we get taken too far out celebrating a win that we don't come back to what works for us, we're back to that who's to blame. It's not anybody else's fault that I'm not waking up when I'm supposed to. I loved your post today about the alarm and not showing up for myself. I can't have expectations of other people if I don't have them for myself.
Right.
So, you know, that process of routine is what's kept me where I'm at and kept me in momentum and still playing the game. Yes, I love it.
Yeah. Doing stuff.
You're good.
Okay.
Yeah, you guys are doing stuff, huh? So that's a good transition actually to your breath work, because that's one area of my life I have truly tried so many times to meditate. I have been advised, coached, and suggested that you need to learn to meditate because I'm a very high-strung personality, and figuring out how to do that, and I have really tried and never made real progress. And I saw that you do a lot of breath work, that you have a whole thing on sunset breath work.
Mm-hmm.
And sounding like, as you said, undiagnosed ADHD, sounds like you're pretty much type A personality. You're moving around. How can you settle yourself? How were you able to accomplish the ability to sit down, focus on your breath, and shut everything else out?
The wonderful thing about breath work is it's like having a personal trainer. If you need guidance, having someone guide you through a breathwork experience is much like going to the gym and having somebody walk you through the exercises. You're still doing the work, you're still feeling the pain, but you're not necessarily having to think about what you're doing. You're just there in the process, reaping the benefits. And so my first experience with breathwork was actually not great. I was in a very large room at an event with over 400 women. She was one of the speakers. She came on. We were sitting next to people maybe we didn't know. And she just put us into this like weird breath pattern that caused me to feel like I was going to pass out. And I was like, this is terrible. How irresponsible of her to do this to us. I was old enough to know like this doesn't seem like how this should go. And that's where like you get to be discerning in life. Just because somebody meditates this way doesn't mean you're doing it wrong. Like we all have to find our own process in life. And that's what I've learned as I've gotten older is just because something works for you doesn't make me wrong for not being able to do it like you. And so my next experience with breathwork was watching one of my clients I was coaching at the time. I knew she was going through a lot of personal stuff, and she started posting about this couple she was going to these sessions. And I was like, okay, they seem like they're helping. I'll try. So I have this amazing experience, and they walk me through this whole process. It's almost like therapy, but then, there's these weird moments where I get to say things and they're like these affirmations. And then at one point I even got to scream and yell, but like nothing was coming out. It was the most profound experience. They had sound bowls going. It was like a whole thing. And I was like, okay, this is not what I experienced the first time, sitting in a chair at the back of a 400-person conference after I'd had lunch. Don't do breathwork after you have a big meal. So that experience changed me, and I continued to see them until they moved away. And then lo and behold, after I sold my salon, they created a course teaching people how to become like breathwork facilitators. And I'm like, I don't think I ever want to necessarily facilitate, but I'm someone who loves to learn. So I want to learn, what does breathing like this do for you? And so I went all in. It was like a 8-week intensive, like 6-7 hours a day. Like it was intense. And what was great is he's a naturopath doctor. She's a yoga back. Like I learned the science behind everything. I've read many great books about, taping your mouth, like all the things about breath. And it just empowered me to know like we're fully in control of our bodies and our mindset through our breath. But it also connected the dots, like I said earlier, as to why working out for me every morning helped me calm my nervous system and move into holding energy for people all day long at the salon. Mm-hmm. I didn't realize I was already doing a form of breath work through my intense workouts. So I also realized too, like you with meditation, I needed like a guided meditation. So I do best when I can lay there and be in stillness and someone is guiding my thoughts.
Telling you what to focus on.
Correct. Right? I can choose what do I want the guide to be, and I can download that. But Gabby Bernstein is someone who unlocked a lot for me too, as far as meditation and like a self-care practice and like coming back and calming your nervous system. She shared that, meditation can look like anything. And so that gave me the power to say, I can figure out how to do this myself. But like anything, you don't get good at it if you don't practice it. And if you don't really want to do it, your mind is so strong, it will take you out of trying to do it. So I do a variety of different things that help calm my nervous system. I go on clarity walks, which means no phone. I don't go with anybody, no music. I just walk and I think.
How far do you walk?
It depends. How far do I need to walk? Like breath work, sometimes things aren't unlocking till the very end. Have you ever worked out so intensely that you had like an emotional release?
Sure.
Like where you felt like you were going to cry or like something came up?
Maybe not cry, but
yeah, but you felt something.
I felt a change in my emotional state.
Correct. And so breath work does that. If you can get to a place where you're being prompted and the thoughts are coming and you can tap into that innerness that either something needs to be released or you're strongly calling in something or a past memory needs to be unlocked. Like I can't even put into words what actually happens. It just feels like moving meditation to me. And for someone who has a hard time sitting down, breath work, you have to focus on your breath pattern to keep it going. So it gets you out of your head, into your body and connected like that. So I've never fully stepped into facilitating it. It's something I'm still like,
Have you ever done for any of your friends?
Yes. Yeah. Oh, we had to do like live practicing and all that. And so one of the girls I trained with, she's now doing it full time. She's coming to my retreat. And we are hosting a separate, for people who couldn't come to the actual retreat part, we're doing one of the evenings, like a sunset experience. So her and I are going to co-facilitate. And I said, come into the space, help me step into this, because I want to host them myself while I'm at my retreats.
So what's your retreat?
Oh, you're going to like the name of the retreat.
I love the name.
It's called Chill the Fuck Out. I was sitting in a room with 22 highly ambitious, high-achieving women in a 4-day mastermind. And everybody's talking about their dreams. And, it takes a minute to crack people open. And if you've ever been coached, or if you ever coached anybody, usually they come to you with something that's surface level as the quote unquote problem. And then as you dig in there, you realize that's not actually what's going on, and you get to the real shit. So can you imagine after 4 intense days with this many women, like the connections, the conversations, like people were unlocked. And we were going around the table talking about like our next action step, what we were going to do when we went home. And the agency had been on my mind, but I wasn't rooted in it yet. I couldn't see the bigger vision. But retreats have been something that have been calling me for years. I love going to Cabo. I go a couple times a year. It's where I celebrate my birthday. It's just a place I feel at home at. And I wanted nothing more than to host a retreat there. So I've looked into it a couple times. I even sold tickets once. I actually sold 1 ticket, and then I gave the girl her money back because I got in my head about being a retreat host and it being overwhelming because I had never done it before. Mm-hmm. Shocker. So finally, people are going around the table, and 2 different women said something about their retreats. And old me would have been like, well, they're already doing retreats, so I shouldn't, or I can't, right? They're not doing them where I live. They're not me. It's like not opening a salon, not starting a business, not starting a podcast, like dumb thought. But I thought it, and I said it anyways. When it came to be my turn, I said, I just want to create retreats where women like us can chill the fuck out. And it just came out of my mouth. And 3 women shot their hand up. They're like, I would go to a retreat called Chill the Fuck Out. Like, would we just chill? I said, yes. Would you want things curated? They're like, no, we want to just chill. And I'm like, I can be the facilitator of chill? Mm-hmm. It was like another window of opportunity, like podcasting. You can just talk to people, and that can be your job. I was like, I can be a retreat host, and people can just come and be in my energy. And like, yes, please.
Yeah.
Why weren't these posted as jobs when we were graduating high school? They didn't exist yet, for one. We'll just say that.
Maybe. That's true.
Maybe.
Don't date us too long.
Yeah. Well, listen. So it was in that moment that I was in the right room to express a real true feeling of something that I had been kind of holding back on. And I got home and I looked into the Cabo retreat, actually went to Cabo like 2 weeks later, planned out everything, and again felt that overwhelm. And I said, why don't you just create a retreat in San Diego, one of the other destination places of the world, like we talked about in the beginning, rent an Airbnb, facilitate it for 6 or 7 people, start small, hopefully you break even, see if you even like it before you coin yourself as a retreat host, and do the things you've been wanting to do, like the breath work and, helping people connect their voice to their brand. Maybe they don't need a podcast. So I just booked the house. When you pay, it puts your ass against the fire. So I dropped $4 or $5 grand on the house, and I found the sickest house I could in Cardiff with 100. Where do I want to spend time? Yep. And I promoted the hell out of it and sold out within a couple of weeks. Yeah. And I can't wait. It's in 2 weeks. So
how many people?
We've got 7 girls.
Okay.
Right. The house only sleeps that many. And I got a lot of people reaching out saying, oh, I can't do those dates. And so I reached out to my girlfriend and I said, do you want to co-facilitate one night? We'll do a breathwork experience. I said, then we can invite people who can't stay at the retreat or couldn't afford it or whatever their reasoning was. And we can invite them into that experience. They can see what it's like in there. They can experience breathwork, and we can make more money. Because at the end of the day, I want to run a business that's profitable.
Makes sense.
Okay. So we sold a few more tickets to that. So now that night we'll probably have 15 women in there getting to experience breathwork through us as we step into that space. So I'm so excited.
That's really cool.
I know.
So what's the plan? What's your intention beyond that one night?
Well, my intention for the time at the retreat space is for people to be able to chill the fuck out.
But be in your energy.
Yes. And to get the content to show that we can create curated events to help you come chill the fuck out.
Are you going to also be curating relationships between them? Do they know each other? Are these strangers?
Some of the women know each other, but the majority of them don't. And I'm always so proud of women who book shit for themselves and come alone. That is the most difficult thing. And we don't even go to the bathroom alone.
I read this thing. Most people won't even go into a restaurant and eat alone.
Yeah, isn't that sad?
It's crazy to me.
Do you know your human design?
What does that mean?
Okay, we'll get into that that'll be in a whole nother podcast. But
well, hold on, I need to know what that means.
Okay, so I'm not fully trained in it. I did study from one of the greats. Her name is Erin Claire Jones. If you are interested in learning human design, go follow her content. So human design is kind of what people categorize as like your sign. So you're a Pisces, you're a Virgo, whatever. Your human design, there's 5 types. You're either a manifesting generator, a manifester, a projector, or a reflector.
Okay.
So when you think of yourself, I always thought, well, manifesting generator sounds like what I would be, right? I get
Sounds
shit
cool.
done. It sounds cool. And what's crazy is I'm a projector. So I'll run your chart for you. It's not a personality test. It's strictly based off where you were born, what time, when, and I think you put your name in. But it's based off time and place of birth.
So it's like
a birth chart.
Like sign. Like I'm Aries because I was born on April 8th.
Correct. You can't say I would pick orange over red. Like it's not a personality thing. And it really helps you understand your personality type, I guess, and how you operate. So for projectors, we can go in these really amazing sprints. Like most projectors can get more done in a 2 to 3 hour period than the majority of the other designs. And we need a lot of rest. A lot of projectors like to be alone. And so in that, I feel like I've learned a lot about myself. I've learned that I need a lot of rest time. And it's why I'm probably craving this alone time with podcasting, which I get to do a lot by myself. I do a lot of solo episodes, and why I felt so called to bring this out into the world. And so it once you put your thoughts out into the world, it's so crazy what comes back to you, right? That part of manifestation of like, if it doesn't exist, create it, And so that piece and being able to step into running the retreat, it's like a business. Can I facilitate the breath work, or do I have to shop that out every time? Can I teach yoga, or do I have to bring somebody in? In the beginning, I want to know all aspects of how I run this retreat. I am calling in for backup this time because I want that support. I want these women to have an amazing experience, and I want to watch what happens. And so I can mirror, people coming in and teaching and holding space the way I maybe want to.
That's a great segue because you said holding space.
Yes.
On your IG, my favorite name you have for yourself is Space Holder. And I have to ask, what does that mean?
For our woo-woo friends, they know what that means. They know what space holder means when I say that. I think I always want people to feel heard. I always want people to know that whatever they're saying, in whatever state they're in, I hear you and I receive that. I may not agree with it. I may not understand it. But there is no deeper connection you can have with a person than really letting them know that you hear them and that you see them, right? So holding space for someone means that to me. And once I realized I actually was a good listener, I could do that for people. My clients have stayed with me behind the chair 15, 20 years. They don't stay with me just because I'm a great hairdresser, because I'm actually not that good at doing hair.
Really?
It's the space I'm holding for them.
Pretty good.
Well, thank you. But we always have our set expectations set high. But I think it's the space I was able to hold for people over the years. The conversations that happen in my chair after 2.5, 3 hours of sitting with someone every 5 weeks for 15 years, I know some shit.
Yeah. It's therapy.
It's therapy. And like, I've always had that gift. I've never understood. Like, I can meet someone and they'll share something with me that I'm like, I doubt you normally just tell random people this. Maybe you do, but probably not.
We're not going to talk off air.
No. Yeah. No. So the second you touch somebody, that deepens it even more. And so to be able to hold that space, I felt very privileged to get to do that for so many people, because I knew clients before they met their husband and then got married and then had children and then got divorced and then met their next. Like, I mean, in 20 years, you experience a lot with people. I spent more time with the majority of my clients that I got to with my own family, my friends. So it's something that I hold very near and dear. And I thought to myself, as a quote unquote space holder, how can I do that for people in a bigger sense? And so having this podcast gives me that sense of holding space for people, because I'm bringing conversations to light that maybe they're not able to talk about with anybody else, or maybe no one's keeping it real with them.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe no one's sharing the secrets. Like, everyone's keeping stuff close to the vest. When we were starting out in our 20s, it wasn't you shared all your shit. You held it here. You didn't share your stuff.
It was actually frowned upon.
It was very frowned upon. And if you wanted access, it was you were paying for it. And so times have changed. And I feel like as connected as we are, we've never been more disconnected. People hide behind screens. They hide behind, fake facades on social. Like, it's so rare to really be heard, Because how often do you sit with somebody and they're not on their phone? It's difficult to get that time with people, you know, or they're not in front of the TV having a conversation with you. Like even my relationship now, like he's okay having the radio on, the TV on, and that's just how his brain works. He can listen to me too. But like I said, I can't listen to you when all that's going on. That's why I can't meditate without like all this shit. So learning to be able to hold space for people has been, I think, my biggest gift that I've unlocked and been able to really tune into. And I think it's what sets me apart from other people. You know, when we're all looking for that secret sauce or that uniqueness that makes us different or special or important, I've learned that, you know, people come to me with stuff. And so I should honor the fact that that's a sacred space I get to hold for them.
Man, that's deep. That's deep stuff, because I've never heard the phrase space holder.
Really?
No. I've never actually heard that phrase, but when I read it on your Instagram and then hearing you explain it, I mean, you're right. It is hard. We don't truly hear each other very much. Like I'm thinking back on even conversations I had with some of my closest friends, spouse, kids. It is very surface level. It is hard to actually have that moment where you're locked in, undistracted, and truly hearing each other. But you're right. It does truly connect people. Like if you can get there.
Right. We're only able to do it right now because we don't have our phones. We know we're on a time. We know we're being filmed. Like we're creating this curated space. And that's also why I love podcasting, because I am getting someone's full on attention. And it's also why people love listening to podcasts, because usually they're in a flow state. They're driving in their car, they're running, they're taking a shower, they're cleaning the kitchen, whatever they're doing. It's you and them in their ear, or you and them and the guest, right? And they feel part of the conversation. They hear themselves in your story. So if you can make your life relatable by sharing your perspectives, like you bring people into your space. And I don't take that lightly. That's why I think I'm so passionate about the content I create and the conversations I get to curate, because I know I'm getting this one opportunity. Maybe this is the first time someone's listening to my show. Like I want to make it impactful and meaningful. And so I think whenever we have heart around something or something means something to us, we show up for it.
Yeah. Yeah. So I have to ask you, do you have a clearly defined set of core values or a success formula that you have either written down or in your mind that you use time and time again?
Well, can I share a reel that I created this morning? I haven't posted it yet, but I'm going to share it because I think even asking me that question, I feel like you're setting me up to give somebody a framework or playbook that they can then use.
I'm giving them a formula that you use.
Got it. Okay. But in that, sometimes we want to take somebody else's formula and try and use it on ourselves. And this is again where when I talked about being discerning about what you hear, what works for me might not work for you if you're listening. And to know, like, always take what is for you and leave what is not. Just because Jeff rolls some way doesn't mean that's going to work for me, and vice versa. So for me, that formula looks like building in those non-negotiables that I talked about. And my core values and principles have evolved over the years. Like before I had my son, they were more about me. And that's the majority of how it is for people who don't have kids yet. They're their center of their universe, right? And then you have children and everything shifts and changes and you show up differently, you think differently, you're worrying about different things. And so since having my son, first and foremost, like family is number one. He comes first over everything. If my decision is going to affect him in a negative way, it doesn't happen. So family first, and then really staying true to like who I am. And I learned through starting this podcast, I hit about episode 40 when it was still called Beauty Inspires Beauty. And I started to feel a ton of resistance around doing solo episodes. I wanted to hide behind the interviews. And I called my little brother, who is about 11 years younger than me. And this kid is like unapologetic as fuck about who he is. I credit that to me being an awesome older sister. But we grew up in Santee. He's half Middle Eastern Italian. And if you don't know, Santee's kind of like super whitewashed. It's not exactly where you want to claim to be because it's got such a bad name. And he wanted to get into music and be a rapper. I said, what is this Middle Eastern half white boy from Santee going to rap about? Like, I know there's M&Ms out there, but like my brother, I called him and he said, it's because you're not being yourself. If you allowed yourself to be yourself, and I was like, oh, like you? Then you wouldn't be afraid to show up. You're scared. And I had realized that I'd put so much emphasis on beauty inspires beauty as being feminine and soft and girly. And I allowed for the name. I made that story up myself. I allowed for that name to keep me from using the F word and speaking my mind and getting passionate, which sometimes sounds like I'm pissed off, angry, and talking, at you versus to you. And I said, well, then I guess I got to start cussing and using my real language and talking like I really feel. And it unlocked everything for me. Mm-hmm. And so be able to show up as myself, it changed everything. It changed everything for the podcast. It changed everything in my life. So, learning authenticity about who you truly are and standing in that value that you're not going to be for everybody and knowing that. And so that being someone's core value, like standing in authenticity will unlock everything for you. It will stop confusing you on what needs to be posted or how you should show up. Who are you? Document what you're doing. Don't create, document. And so, the other piece to my core values is, am I creating something that is impactful? I never thought outside of myself and survival mode in my early years. Make the money, pay the bills, do the thing. But as I've gotten older, I've realized like the impact that our words have, that our actions have, that like contributing to society has. I watch a lot of my great mentors, step into this space where they can give so much. And so the mindset around money changed a ton for me. If I make more money, I can do better things in the world. Chris Harder, one of my favorite mentors, says when good people make good money, they can do great things. And so it shifted my carrot for me, as he calls it, right? What's your carrot? What drives you? And it's allowed for me to want more for my life so I can then do more for other people. And shifting out of the mindset of like just taking care of yourself and then moving it into a bigger scale. Like, look how many people you're responsible for their livelihood. That changes everything for you. And so the things I posted today on the reel was the small success formula for people to start taking action. The first one is to take some sort of action today. Mm-hmm. Even if you can't see the big vision for what it is you want to create, take that action. Second piece is be consistent. Consistently take that action. Go after those no's that we were talking about earlier. And the third piece that everybody hates right now is get mentorship. Find people who are doing and living the life that you want to live and start emulating it. Ask them to be your mentor, pay for access to them, buy their course, get in their world somehow. And repeat those three things until you get clear and more confident around what it is you're doing, what it is you're creating. Because 3-4 years ago when I decided to join Chris's mastermind, I had no idea what I wanted to create. I just knew that I was living in a place of comfort, that life was just pretty good. But I had this voice inside of me that was like, but you're meant for more. You're meant to create more of an impact. And you go through the process of like, well, who am I to do that? Or who am I to, no one's going to listen to me. I hate my voice, all the things. But I got in a room that stretched me and made me feel like the smallest fish in that pond. But then I quickly realized, as we all shared, we all felt like that. We all felt like we didn't deserve to be in that room, that we didn't bring any value. And through mentorship and being in that mastermind, it shifted my perspective on what was possible, that I wasn't alone in the challenges I felt like I was facing. And it's just propelled me to stay in the game and continue to prove to myself like what I'm fucking made of.
I love that whole direction you just went. And I will say how you started when you said, a formula that you give to other people, that's not really the spirit, because the spirit of a formula that you give is soft skills. I can't give you your perseverance. I can't give you the right and freedom to be authentic. I can tell you that successful people do those things and expose you to them. And that's what I'm trying to accomplish. And that's why I asked you, because when you said it felt like I was asking you to give them, I'm not. What I'm hoping to share with the audience, what I want everyone listening to understand is, as we bring on incredible people like yourself, we start to have this commonality of attributes that successful people have. Exposure is one of them. Mm-hmm. I believe it's possible. Like you said it.
Yep.
And if you don't believe it's possible, you said take a step. One of my main core values, my third success formula for myself is take immediate decisive action. Doesn't matter which direction, doesn't matter if it's the right one, start, take an action, right? Be curious, be an avid learner, commitment, consistency. These are attributes that if I'm not consistent and I'm someone who starts a lot of things and quits, and I'm not successful, it doesn't matter what I'm doing. What I need to focus on is, why am I quitting? Why am I not being consistent? This seems to be the common trait. that common success formula.
Yeah.
Because success is formulaic and it leaves clues. To your point, get in the room, get mentorship, get around other people who have or are doing what you want to do at the level you want to do it. Because once you realize that someone else can do it, it's like the 4-minute mile.
Mm-hmm.
Couldn't be done until it was done.
Mm-hmm.
Now everyone does it.
Yeah.
Not me, but everyone else does
same.
it. You know, because once we realized it was possible, it wasn't this unobtainable thing. Once we land one chip on Mars, Elon Musk, we're going to land 1 million of them on. And that's just the way human evolution goes. And so that's what I love about my mission on this show and what I'm so excited to learn from you and why I'm glad you actually ended up saying your success formula. You know, those attributes, as you said, is taking that steps today, consistently taking that step, and then getting exposed and being around mentors who can help expose you to what's possible and doing that again and again and again. And I think that's why you were successful behind the chair for so many years, why you're successful with the Unscripted podcast, why I think your Chill the Fuck Out retreat is going to eventually become massive. Your breath work, whether or not you choose to pursue it, is going to become something. Why your book, which we didn't even get to dive into, and why you're a published author, soon to be a second one.
I hope so. Yeah, I've got a lot. I don't even know where to start. I have a series of 4 that I'd like to knock out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But in all that vein, that's what excites me. And that's kind of what I'm trying to accomplish as I get hit up a lot from individuals looking for success examples and help. And how can I be, and how can you, and can you teach me, and can I pick your brain? And I can't teach you how to do a lot of the things that have made me successful. You can't teach what made you successful. It is unique to you. It's unique to me. But what I can demonstrate and what I can shine light on is the authentic truth of what makes successful people successful, so we can all have that mirror moment. We all have to take those times and go, where do I need to improve? What are the things I need to focus on right now to make tomorrow better for me?
Mm-hmm.
And what I love that Chris taught you and David Meltzer, one of my mentors, taught me is I have to make a lot of money. Because if I don't make a lot of money, I can't help a lot of people. I don't have the freedom to be doing a show like this, not caring if it makes me money or not. I have to worry about paying my bills.
Mm-hmm.
Same for you. And so we have to be selfish to be selfless at the biggest level.
I love that. You have to be selfish to be selfless.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it's interesting because, you know, creating my podcast has been a lot of sacrifice and a lot of money I've spent. You know, I've robbed Peter to pay Paul in order to create this. And I think, you know, when we can understand, and I love that you shared that piece, you actually just helped me a ton connect some dots right there, because when I was deciding to step into the online space, I was like, well, teach what you know. You know, you've come from the beauty industry. What made you successful? How can you help other people have the career that you had? And I couldn't put pen to paper with it. And you kind of just took the words out of my brain as to why I couldn't figure out the success formula that I could teach. It was just who I was. When I would look around the salon as, why am I twice as busy as everyone else? Why are people complaining they're slow? I'm not. Why in the recession time in 2008, when I had to, you know, short sale my home, was I still making 6 figures? Like, I didn't understand looking back. I'm like, I just outworked everybody. But there was that phone book moment of having to do those calls and driving around in my mom's minivan to try to get listings as she sold real estate. Like, I look back now at the resiliency that was taught to me at a very young age and see where it came from. And I think the piece that you're showing and we're showcasing with our shows and getting these messages out in front of people is take this at least action, right? Inspired, messy, but like, get out of that indecision and do something and do it again and again and again until you're sure that it's not working. And then try something else. Like, it's funny because I know people in corporate where they always want to roll these initiatives out and they always want to have workshops on things. And it's like, how long did you try that workshop before you got another workshop or you tried a different like marketing thing? Stick to something, tweak it a little bit. Like, if it's not landing, but keep going. If I only tried to promote the retreat once and then it didn't sell and then I thought it was a failure, well, no.
Mm-hmm.
I thought to myself, well, if I get stuck with the house by myself, what a great vacation I'm going to have. And so when I showed up with that energy talking about it, people wanted to come. And so when you shift your perspective, like we said earlier, around how you're showing up and why you're showing up, like, I think one of the most annoying questions one of my girlfriends would ask me when I would like get into conversation around like the stupid stuff. This isn't working. This is that. I don't know. She'd just look at me in the face and she'd say, well, what do you want? And I think we're so inundated with what everybody else has and wants that we can't even discern what do we actually want or need. Maybe you're listening and you're like, I don't care to make a huge impact in the world. I don't care to have multiple companies and run, 27 different brands. That's fine. But what do you want to do? Mm-hmm. And what's going to help you continue to enjoy that life that you're choosing? I think when we can step back and realize maybe we've worked hard to get where we want to be, and you're looking at other people's dreams thinking you should have those too. Come back to a place of, that's where meditation and the breath work and the connecting piece of like taking time off, like going to a retreat or listening to a podcast can unlock that for you, where you realize like either I'm good or I need to do something,
Yes.
And that's only we can understand that for ourselves. And that's where, like, as a society, I think a lot of us have stopped thinking for ourselves. We want, Jeff, what should I do? How many times do people ask Gary Vee, what should I do?
Yes.
How should I make money? He's like, I don't know who the fuck you are. I don't know what you should do. I don't know what your skill set is. I don't know what you know. I don't know what you grew up learning. I don't know what you believe about yourself. I could teach you how to make a couple $1 million, but if you don't believe you should have it, you'll make it and you'll lose it. So it's just so crazy that, if we can't tap back into ourselves, if we can't go to that woo side of connecting to what is it who we truly are and what we want, the success doesn't matter. The money doesn't matter.
Correct. And success isn't just money.
No.
Being a successful parent is the same thing as being a successful entrepreneur.
Anything.
A successful athlete, a successful friend, a successful spouse, successful kid. It's the same. It leaves those clues. And you're right. I mean, what you should do is what lights your hair on fire every day.
I love that.
That's what you should be doing.
Well, great segue, because that's why I wrote the book. It's called Come As You Are, which I didn't know was a sex book title, but that's kind of cool. I'm fine with it. But it's the art of unbecoming who they told you to be. Because how many of us wake up in our 30s, late 30s and 40s, even 50s, and we want to label it this midlife crisis? Like, oh, what are you imploding your 6-figure hair business for? Because I want to make multiple 6 figures and 7 and 8 figures. And I can't do it doing what I'm doing right now. Mm-hmm. The old version's got to go, and I got to make some changes. But, coming from a family where my mom wanted me to go to a 4-year college and be a doctor, a lawyer, a teacher, one of the like respectable professions, so she could look like she was a good mom. No shade to my mom. But I understand that thought process from back then. 22 years ago, those were the predictable, dependable. She wanted me to have an easier life than her. She was a makeup artist and she did the non-traditional things, and it was tough and hard. And she had me at 19. So watching her resilience, building this, multi-million-dollar business that she has now, like, at what cost though? We never saw her. All she did was work. And so there were things I learned I did want to do, didn't want to do. And, looking back, it's like, I did a lot of things to give respect to my mom. I made decisions based off what I thought she would want for me. And I woke up one day with the house and the car and the husband, and I was like, this isn't what I wanted and how I wanted it, with who I want it with. She's going to be so disappointed in me. And when I decided to let her dreams die and go after my own is when everything started to shift. And I think, that's a huge part for people. And Alex Hormozi talks about this on Steve Bartlett's podcast. I just listened to it. One of my friends sent it to me, and he shares that early on that, he woke up in this life that he didn't want to be waking up to anymore. And he finally had to understand that his dad was going to be disappointed in him. And even though his dad had sacrificed so much, he was like, I have to go chase my own dreams. So he went from, this amazing job to sleeping on the floor at his gym to build a dream in a life that he wanted, that meant something to him. He was willing to scrub the floors and sleep there and do the sales calls and do all the shit because it meant something to him. So I think at the end of the day, like, to put a bow on this is just, I wanted to show proof through my words in this short but to the point book that, if you wake up one day and you realize you're living someone else's dream, like, you can do something about it.
Well, normally I would ask you what's your final message, but I think you just hit it. If you're living someone else's dream, you can do something about it.
And sometimes we don't even realize that's what's happening. That's why a lot of people get confused and frustrated and they implode their life, around this age. And again, they're not getting quiet and getting really in tune with who are you now? What do you want? What do you feel you need in your life? When you can tap back into that, potential is limitless.
It's so true. And Jessica, this has been inspiring for me on many fronts.
Yay.
Because you are a true badass.
Thank you.
I'm a fan of your show Unscripted. I have not taken your course, Start Your Damn Podcast, but for anyone who is sitting on the sideline and wants to take a course or wants to learn how to podcast or thinking about podcasting, you should reach out to Jessica. You should probably take her course, Start Your Damn Podcast, so you will start your damn podcast. And if you're stressed out this week and you need to chill the fuck out, there's a retreat that's sold out. But I think another one's coming.
Yes.
Is it only open to women?
As of now, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, for now, for the female audience, you can chill the fuck out with Jessica at some badass house.
And I just will say to all your male listeners, because I'm sure there's more than women, maybe, I don't know, but they probably have a special woman in their life who they would like if she had the opportunity to go chill the fuck
Although
out.
that would be a little awkward. Hey, honey, I bought you a retreat because you need to go chill the fuck out. I'm going to send you to the retreat.
I don't think I would find a woman who would be mad about that. As long as he dropped it with the right tone, wrapped in the right package, it would land well.
Fair.
Yeah.
Fair. And get her book, Come As You Are.
Thank you.
It's not a sex book.
I know. I'm sorry to disappoint you. You can get that one too on Amazon.
Yes.
Yeah.
But Jessica, thank you so much. How can everyone else follow you outside of just the 4 things I just mentioned?
Yeah. Well, I hang out on social media, begrudgingly. I wish I could just post my sandwich in my Starbucks, but it's just at Jessica Burgio. You can follow the podcast at Unscripted the Podcast. And soon to be, if you don't want to do all the back end work yourself on your podcast, we are creating an agency where we do it all for you.
And what's the name of that agency?
So we were going back and forth. You got to figure with GoDaddy and all that kind of stuff. So it's Broadcasting Unscripted.
Oh, Broadcasting Unscripted. I'll have to check that out myself.
Mm-hmm. We have
Jessica?
1 follower on Instagram right now, so come help me.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show today and sharing your success formula and your journey and all the different ways that you have figured out to move your life forward in such a positive way. You're a beacon of energy. This has been an awesome experience for me. As I mentioned, we got to meet today on the show, so I'm excited to have a new friend. I'm going to pick your brain and leverage all of your expertise in the podcasting space and the breathwork space as I give it another try, because I'll end with the only guided meditation I ever did on breathwork was with Mark Devine, a former Navy SEAL, and it was
Intense.
Still Water Runs Deep. And it was a bit intense.
I bet it was.
It felt intense. I was able to make it through it, but I don't think I got what I needed from it.
Well, I invite you. I will do a session with you if you allow for me to practice with you. Maybe we can tap into the little bit more feminine energy and unlock some of that stuff in there. So I think it would be good for you.
Yes, I'm in.
Deal.
Well, thank you, Jessica. This was awesome.
Thank you.
Hey everyone, first I want to thank all of you for tuning in. And if you guys haven't heard about my new book, Relationship Bank Account, click the link in the show notes or search the title on Amazon. This book is packed with all my secrets to success in both relationships and life. Make sure to pick up a copy, and if the book helps you on your journey, let us know by leaving a review. I appreciate all of you and can't wait to see you on the next one.